17 black R&B legends who struggled with cigarette addiction. What if I told you that some of the greatest voices in black music history weren't just fighting for fame, but quietly battling habits that followed them everywhere, from smoky studios to late-night stages? These weren't just legends, they were human living in an era where certain choices were normal, but the consequences were real. Tonight, we are uncovering the untold side of icons you thought you knew. Stories that may change how you see their legacy forever. So before we begin, ask yourself, were these habits part of the culture or part of the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us on Golden Black Legends for more powerful stories that history doesn't always tell. Bobby Womack. Bobby Womack wasn't just a singer, he was a survivor whose voice carried the full weight of life's contradictions. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, he began his journey in gospel music alongside his brothers before being discovered by Sam Cooke, a turning point that launched him into the heart of soul music history. By the 1970s, Womack had carved out a unique space with songs like Across 110th Street, a track that captured the raw tension of urban America with unmatched honesty. What made Womack unforgettable was not perfection, but truth. His voice had a worn, almost weathered texture shaped by years of personal struggle. He lived through addiction loss and controversy battles that didn't just affect his career but deeply impacted his health. Like many artists of his era, smoking was part of the environment surrounding studio sessions and life on the road, though it was only one piece of a much larger and more complicated lifestyle. In his later years, Womack faced serious health issues including colon cancer, diabetes, and lung cancer. While no single factor defines a life, these challenges reflected decades of physical and emotional strain. Yet even as his body weakened, his creative spirit refused to fade. His 2012 album, The Bravest Man in the Universe, marked a powerful comeback, proving that his voice, though aged, still had something urgent to say. When Bobby Womack passed away in 2014 at the age of 70, he left behind more than a catalogue of music. He left a story of resilience, of a man who turned pain into poetry. For listeners especially, those who grew up with his sound, his journey serves as a quiet reminder that behind every legend is a human being, flawed, enduring, and unforgettable. Kendricks. Eddie Kendricks possessed a voice that felt almost otherworldly, light, graceful, and instantly recognizable. As a founding member of the Temptations, he helped shape the signature Motown sound that defined a generation. His falsetto led classics like Just My Imagination and played a key role in the emotional depth that made the group legendary. But behind that effortless sound was a life built on discipline and constant performance. The Temptations toured relentlessly during the 1960s and 1970s, often performing hundreds of shows each year. That kind of schedule demanded not only vocal strength but physical endurance. Like many performers of that era, Kendricks lived in an environment where smoking was common backstage, on tour buses, and even in recording spaces. Although he was never known for excess in the same way as some of his peers, Kendricks still faced serious health challenges later in life. By the late 1980s, fans began to notice subtle changes in his voice. In 1991, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, a disease strongly associated with long-term smoking, though individual causes can vary. One of the most emotional moments came during a reunion performance with the Temptations. As he returned to the stage, the contrast was undeniable. The voice that once floated with ease now carried strain, a reflection of the battle happening behind the scenes. It was a powerful reminder that even the most beautiful instruments can wear down over time. Eddie Kendricks passed away in 1992 at just 52 years old. His legacy, however, remains untouched. His voice continues to echo through generations, reminding listeners not only of musical excellence, but of the importance of protecting the very gift that defines an artist, their breath, their body, and their life. Ray Charles. Ray Charles didn't just create music, he redefined what soul sounded like. Born in Albany, Georgia and raised in poverty, he lost his sight at the age of 7. Yet what he lost in vision, he gained in extraordinary musical perception. By the 1950s and 60s, Ray Charles had fused gospel, blues, and jazz into something entirely new, giving birth to what we now call soul music. Hits like Georgia, On My Mind, and Hit the Road. Jack made him a global icon. But behind the genius was a man navigating intense personal struggles. Ray Charles lived in an era when smoking was deeply embedded in music culture. Recording studios, late-night writing sessions, and constant touring often came with cigarettes as a quiet companion. For him, it was part of the atmosphere, a rhythm behind the rhythm. More significantly, Charles battled heroin addiction for nearly 2 decades before overcoming it in the mid-1960s. That victory showed a level of discipline that defined much of his later life. However, like many artists of his generation, long-term lifestyle habits, including smoking, were difficult to fully escape. In his later years, Charles faced several health issues, including complications related to liver disease. Despite declining health, he continued performing well into his 70s, driven by an unbreakable connection to music. His final album, Genius Loves Company, was released shortly after his death in 2004 at the age of 73, winning multiple Grammy Awards. Ray Charles' legacy is not just about innovation, it's about endurance. His story reflects a man who rose above unimaginable hardship, yet still carried the quiet weight of habits formed along the way. For many listeners, especially those who grew up with his music, his life serves as a powerful reminder. Greatness can change the world, but the body behind that greatness must still be protected. Billy Paul. Billy Paul had a voice that felt intimate, almost conversational, like he was telling you a secret you weren't supposed to hear. Born in Philadelphia, he began singing at a young age and was already performing in clubs as a teenager. But it wasn't until 1972 that he became a household name with the release of Me and Mrs. Jones, a song that would win a Grammy and define his legacy. That track wasn't just successful, it was emotional storytelling at its finest. Billy Paul didn't rely on vocal power alone. He relied on mood tone and subtle phrasing. His style reflected the sophistication of Philadelphia soul, a sound built on smooth arrangements and emotional depth. Behind the scenes, however, Paul lived a life shaped by the pressures of fame and the demands of constant performance. Like many artists of his era, smoking was a regular part of his routine. Interviews and accounts from those close to him suggest that cigarettes were not just habit but ritual, something tied to preparation, reflection, and emotional expression. Over time, the effects of long-term smoking became more visible. Billy Paul faced serious health issues later in life, including respiratory complications. While it would be inaccurate to reduce his life to a single factor, smoking was widely acknowledged as part of the lifestyle that affected his health. In 2016, Billy Paul passed away at the age of 81 after battling pancreatic cancer and other health challenges. His passing marked the end of an era, but his music continues to resonate across generations. Billy Paul's story is not one of excess or chaos. It's one of quiet endurance. He represented a refined era of soul music where emotion mattered more than spectacle. And yet, even in that calm exterior, there were battles being fought. His life reminds us that sometimes the softest voices carry the deepest stories and the heaviest costs. Little Richard. Little Richard was not just a performer, he was an explosion of energy that changed music forever. Born Richard Penniman in Macon, Georgia, he broke through in the 1950s with a sound that was louder, faster, and more electrifying than anything that came before. Songs like Tutti Frutti and Long Tall Sally didn't just top charts, they helped lay the foundation for rock and roll itself. But behind that unstoppable energy was a deeply complex man. Little Richard lived a life filled with extremes: fame, faith, rebellion, and reflection. He often moved between the worlds of gospel and rock, searching for meaning while never fully escaping the pressures of stardom. Like many entertainers of his generation, smoking was part of the culture surrounding his career. Whether backstage on the road or during long recording sessions, cigarettes were often present. It was a habit shared by countless artists, at the time woven into the fabric of the industry itself. Throughout his life, Little Richard faced numerous health challenges, including issues related to his heart and overall physical condition. In later years, he spoke more openly about the toll that decades of intense living had taken on his body. Despite this, he remained active, continuing to perform and inspire new generations of artists. When he passed away in 2020, at the age of 87, the world didn't just lose a musician, it lost a pioneer. His influence can be heard in countless artists across genres from soul to rock to pop. Little Richard's story is one of brilliance and contradiction. He gave everything to his craft, often at great personal cost. And while his voice could shake an entire room, his life reminds us of something quieter, but just as important, the need to protect the very breath that fuels the music we love. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's voice felt like a conversation with the soul, gentle, aching, and deeply human. Born in Washington, D.C., he rose from a strict and often troubled household into one of Motown's brightest stars. By the late 1960s and early 70s, Gaye had transformed from a polished crooner into a fearless artist, using music to confront social issues. His landmark album, What's Going On, became more than a record. It became a reflection of a generation searching for answers. But behind that brilliance was a man constantly at war with himself. Marvin struggled with anxiety, depression, and substance use, battles that shaped both his music and his personal life. The environments he moved through, late-night studios, long tours, and high-pressure expectations, often normalized habits like smoking, which were deeply embedded in the culture of the time. As the years passed, the emotional weight he carried became harder to manage. Despite moments of renewal, including the success of sexual healing in the early 1980s, his inner conflicts never fully faded. His life was tragically cut short in 1984 at the age of 44, not by illness but by violence within his own family. Marvin Gaye's story is one of unmatched artistry and profound vulnerability. He gave the world music that spoke of love, pain, and truth with rare honesty. Yet his journey also reminds us that even the most gifted voices need peace, protection, and care. His legacy lives on, not only in the songs that still move millions, but in the lessons hidden between every note he ever sang. Johnny Bristol. Johnny Bristol may not have always stood in the spotlight, but his influence shaped the sound of an entire era. Born in North Carolina, he became one of Motown's most important behind-the-scenes figures, writing, producing, and helping craft hits that defined the golden age of soul. From Ain't No Mountain High Enough to his own success with Hang On, in there Baby Bristol's fingerprints were everywhere. What set Johnny apart was his precision. He wasn't just creating songs, he was building emotion layer by layer. Long hours in the studio demanded intense focus, and like many producers of his time, he worked in environments where smoking was a constant presence. It was part of the rhythm of creation, sessions, stretching into the early morning, ideas forming in between quiet moments of reflection. Though never as publicly turbulent as some of his peers, Bristol's life was not without its pressures. The demands of sustaining success in a fast-changing industry required resilience and adaptability. He carried those expectations, quietly channeling them into his work rather than public display. In later years, his contributions were increasingly recognized by those who understood how deeply he had shaped the music they loved. When Johnny Bristol passed away in 2004 at the age of 65, it marked the loss of a craftsman whose work often spoke louder than his name. His story is a reminder that not every legend stands at the front of the stage. Some build the very foundation others stand on. And in those quiet spaces between sound and silence are stories of dedication, sacrifice, and the unseen habits that travel alongside creation. Wilson Pickett. Wilson Pickett didn't just perform, he exploded onto the stage with a force that demanded attention. Born in Prattville, Alabama, and later moving to Detroit, he carried with him both the raw emotion of the South and the industrial grit of the North. By the mid-1960s, Pickett had become one of the most powerful voices in soul music, delivering unforgettable hits like In the Midnight Hour, Mustang Sally, and Land of 1000 Dances. What made him unique wasn't just his voice, it was the intensity behind it. Every performance felt urgent, almost as if he was racing against something unseen. The energy, the sweat, the relentless touring schedule, this was not an easy life. Like many artists of that era, the backstage environment was filled with long nights' pressure and habits that became part of the routine, including smoking, which was widely normalized in studios and on the road. Pickett's life was not without turbulence. He faced legal troubles and personal struggles that reflected the darker side of fame. Yet even through those challenges, his voice remained unmistakable, gritty, commanding, and full of soul. It was a voice that didn't ask for permission, it demanded to be heard. As the years passed, the physical demands of his career began to take a toll. Performing at such a high level for decades required more than talent, it required endurance. By the time he reached his later years, his pace had slowed, but his influence had already been cemented in music history. Wilson Pickett passed away in 2006 at the age of 64. His legacy lives on, not just in the songs but in the emotion he poured into every note. He reminds us that true soul music comes from deep within, but sustaining that fire requires care for the body that carries it. Etta James. Etta James had a voice that could shake a room and still feel deeply personal. Born in Los Angeles, she rose to fame as a teenager, but it was her ability to blend vulnerability with strength that made her unforgettable. Songs like At Last Tell, Mama and I'd Rather Go Blind weren't just performances, they were emotional experiences that connected instantly with listeners. Her journey, however, was far from smooth. Behind the elegance of her voice was a life marked by struggle, resilience, and survival. Etta James battled heroin addiction for years, a fight that affected both her personal life and her career. Yet, she never allowed those struggles to define her completely. Instead, she returned again and again with a voice that felt even deeper, even more real. During the height of her career, she performed in an era where smoky clubs, late-night sessions, and constant touring were the norm. Cigarettes were part of that environment, woven into the daily rhythm of life on stage and behind the scenes. Over time, combined with the physical toll of addiction, these conditions contributed to serious health challenges later in her life. In the 1980s and beyond, Etta James made a remarkable comeback, earning multiple Grammy Awards and critical recognition. Her later performances carried a weight that only lived experience could bring. You could hear not just the notes, but the life behind them. Etta James passed away in 2012 at the age of 73 after battling leukemia and other health complications. Her voice, however, remains timeless. It continues to echo across generations, reminding us of the power of honesty in music. Her story is not just about talent, it's about endurance. And it shows that even through hardship, a voice can rise, break, and still find a way to be heard. 2. James Brown. James Brown wasn't just called the godfather of soul, he earned that title through sheer force of will. Born into poverty in South Carolina during the Great Depression, Brown's early life was marked by hardship, abandonment, and survival. Music became his escape and eventually his empire. By the 1960s and 70s, he had built a legacy with explosive hits like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag and I Got You, I Feel Good, transforming rhythm and blues into something sharper, tighter, and more powerful, what the world would come to know as funk. On stage, James Brown was relentless. Every performance was a marathon of energy spins, splits, screams, and sweat pouring under hot lights. But behind that superhuman presence was a man constantly pushing his body to its limits. The culture of non-stop touring, late-night rehearsals, and high expectations created an environment where habits like smoking were common, often woven into moments of rest between intense performances. Brown's life was also marked by legal troubles and personal struggles, reflecting the pressure of maintaining control over both his career and his image. Yet even in those moments, his discipline as a performer never faded. He demanded perfection from his band and from himself. In his later years, his health began to decline. Still, he remained active, performing well into his 70s, driven by a need to stay connected to the stage. James Brown passed away in 2006 at the age of 73 due to heart failure complicated by pneumonia. His legacy is undeniable. He didn't just influence music, he reshaped it. But his story also carries a quieter message that even the strongest performers are human. The energy that fuels greatness must be sustained carefully, because once the body begins to wear down, even the loudest voice can fade. Joe Tex. Joe Tex brought something different to soul music. He didn't just sing, he spoke, joked, and connected with his audience in a way that felt personal and immediate. Born in Texas, he started his career in the 1950s, but it was during the 1960s and early 70s that he truly found his voice. Songs like Hold What You've Got and Skinny Legs and All showcased his unique ability to blend storytelling, humor, and rhythm into something unforgettable. What set Joe Tex apart was his style. He wasn't trying to overpower the music, he was living inside it. His performances often felt like conversations full of personality and spontaneous energy. But maintaining that level of connection required constant touring and long hours in an industry that rarely slowed down. Like many artists of his time, Tex lived in an environment where smoking was widely accepted. Backstage rooms, recording sessions, and travel routines often included habits that were considered normal in that era. These patterns, combined with the physical demands of performing, created a lifestyle that was not always easy on the body. Despite his success, Joe Tex eventually stepped away from the spotlight for a period, turning to faith and focusing on a more private life. That decision reflected a deeper search for balance, something many artists struggle to find. Joe Tex passed away in 1982 at the age of 47 after suffering a heart attack. His death was sudden, leaving behind a catalog of music that continues to influence generations. His story is a reminder that not all legends seek constant attention. Some choose to step back, to breathe, to find meaning beyond the stage. And in doing so, they leave behind not just songs, but lessons about life, identity, and the importance of knowing when to pause. David Ruffin. David Ruffin had a voice that could command a room within seconds, raw, powerful, and filled with emotion. As the lead singer of The Temptations during their rise to fame, Ruffin helped define the sound of Motown in the 1960s. Songs like My Girl and Ain't Too Proud to Beg became timeless, driven in large part by his intense vocal delivery. But Ruffin's presence wasn't just about sound, it was about feeling. He didn't simply perform songs, he embodied them. That emotional intensity, however, often came with a personal cost. Fame arrived quickly, and with it came pressure, expectations, and access to a lifestyle that was difficult to manage. Ruffin struggled with substance abuse, particularly cocaine addiction, which had a significant impact on both his career and personal life. His behavior became increasingly unpredictable, leading to conflicts within the Temptations and eventually his departure from the group. Like many performers of his generation, Ruffin spent years in environments where smoking was common, studios filled with haze, long nights on tour, and moments of isolation between shows. These surroundings reflected the reality of the industry at a time where few questioned the long-term effects of such habits. In the years that followed, Ruffin attempted comebacks and continued to perform, but his health and stability were increasingly fragile. In 1991, he passed away at the age of 50 due to an accidental drug overdose. David Ruffin's legacy remains powerful. His voice still resonates with audiences who recognize the passion behind every note. His story, however, is also a cautionary one, reminding us that talent alone is not enough. Protecting one's life, one's body, and one's choices is just as important as achieving greatness. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin wasn't just a singer. She was a force of nature whose voice carried the weight of history, struggle, and triumph. Born in Memphis and raised in Detroit, she grew up surrounded by gospel music in her father's church. From an early age, her talent was undeniable, but it was in the late 1960s, with songs like Respect Think and You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, that she became the undisputed queen of soul. Aretha didn't simply perform songs, she transformed them. Her voice could move from delicate vulnerability to commanding power within a single phrase. That emotional range made her one of the most influential artists of all time, not just in R&B, but across all of American music. Yet behind that greatness was a life shaped by pressure, responsibility, and constant demand. Touring schedules were intense, recording sessions were long, and expectations were relentless. Like many performers of her era, she spent years in environments where smoking was common, backstage rooms filled with conversation, late-night rehearsals, and quiet moments between performances. Over time, the physical toll of decades in the spotlight became more apparent. Aretha faced multiple health challenges later in life, though she remained private about many details. What is clear is that her voice, even as her health declined, retained a depth and authority that few could match. In 2018, Aretha Franklin passed away at the age of 76 after battling pancreatic cancer. The world mourned not just a singer, but a symbol of strength, resilience, and cultural pride. Her legacy lives on in every note she left behind. She reminds us that a voice can change the world, but that voice comes from a human body that must be cared for. And sometimes the strongest voices carry the heaviest burdens in silence. Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes didn't follow the rules, he rewrote them. Born in Tennessee and raised by his grandparents after losing his parents at a young age, Hayes built his life from hardship into something extraordinary. By the late 1960s and early 70s, he had become one of the most innovative figures in soul music, blending orchestral arrangements with deep, resonant vocals. His work on the soundtrack for Shaft didn't just win an Academy Award, it changed the sound of film music forever. With its bold instrumentation and unmistakable groove, it introduced a new level of sophistication to soul. Hayes wasn't just making songs, he was creating atmospheres. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Hayes cultivated a larger-than-life image, shaved head, sunglasses, gold chains, and a commanding presence. Part of that persona included his well-known use of cigars, which became almost symbolic of his identity. It reflected confidence, control, and a certain defiance of convention. But behind that image was a man navigating the same pressures as others in the industry. Long hours in the studio, constant touring, and the demands of maintaining relevance all took their toll over time. Hayes faced financial difficulties in the 1970s, including bankruptcy, before rebuilding his career in later decades through music and acting. In his later years, his health declined, and in 2008, Isaac Hayes passed away at the age of 65 following a stroke. His death marked the end of an era, but his influence remains deeply embedded in modern music. Isaac Hayes left behind more than a catalog, he left a blueprint for artistic freedom. His story reminds us that style, sound, and identity are powerful, but they must be balanced with care for the life behind them. Because even legends, no matter how iconic, are still human beneath the image. Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson was known as Mr. Excitement, and for good reason. When he stepped onto the stage, he didn't just sing, he commanded attention with unmatched charisma, athletic movement, and a voice that could soar effortlessly. Born in Detroit, Wilson rose from gospel roots to become one of the most electrifying performers of the late 1950s and 1960s. Hits like Lonely Teardrops and Higher made him a star, but it was his stage presence that truly set him apart. Every performance was intense. Wilson pushed his body to the limit, night after night, combining dance vocals and raw emotion in a way few artists could replicate. But that level of energy came with a cost. Life on the road, constant touring, and the pressure to maintain perfection created a demanding lifestyle. In that era, environments filled with smoke, clubs, theaters, and backstage rooms were simply part of the reality artists lived in. Despite his success, Wilson's life was marked by financial struggles and health challenges. In 1975, during a performance, he suffered a massive heart attack on stage. Though he survived, he fell into a coma that lasted nearly 9 years. It was a tragic turning point for an artist who had once seemed unstoppable. Jackie Wilson passed away in 1984 at the age of 49. His story remains one of both brilliance and vulnerability. He helped pave the way for future performers, influencing artists like Michael Jackson and James Brown with his dynamic style. Wilson's legacy reminds us that behind the excitement, behind the applause, there is always a human being. And while the spotlight can elevate a performer to greatness, it also demands a level of endurance that few truly understand. Billy Preston. Billy Preston was often called the fifth Beatle, but his story goes far beyond that nickname. Born in Houston, Texas and raised in Los Angeles, Preston showed extraordinary musical talent from a young age. By his teenage years, he was already performing with legends like Ray Charles, and soon after, he became a key collaborator with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. What made Billy Preston special was not just his skill on the keyboard, it was the feeling he brought to every note. Songs like Will It Go Round in Circles and Nothing from Nothing showcased his ability to blend gospel roots with pop sensibility, creating music that felt both joyful and deeply expressive. But like many artists who found success early, Preston's life was not without struggle. The pressures of fame, combined with personal challenges, followed him throughout his career. He battled substance abuse issues, which affected both his health and his professional trajectory over the years. The environments he worked in, recording studios, touring circuits, late-night sessions, often reflected the culture of the time where smoking and other habits were commonplace. These surroundings, combined with years of physical and emotional strain, contributed to declining health later in life. In 2006, Billy Preston passed away at the age of 59 after suffering from kidney failure following a long period of illness. His passing marked the loss of one of the most gifted musicians of his generation. Billy Preston's legacy lives on through the music he helped create. His story is a reminder that talent can open doors to greatness, but sustaining that greatness requires care, balance, and strength beyond the spotlight. Sam Moore. Sam Moore, one half of the legendary duo Sam and Dave, brought a level of passion to soul music that was impossible to ignore. Born in Florida, Moore rose to fame in the 1960s with hits like Soul Man and Hold On, I'm Comin'. Songs that combined gospel intensity with rhythm and blues energy. Together, Sam and Dave became one of the most dynamic acts of their time, known for performances that were as emotional as they were electrifying. Moore's voice was powerful yet controlled, capable of moving effortlessly between grit and smoothness. But maintaining that level of performance required relentless touring and constant engagement with audiences. The life of a soul performer in that era was demanding long nights travel and environments where habits like smoking were simply part of the culture. Beyond the stage, Moore faced personal struggles, including battles with addiction that affected his career and health. Yet his story is also one of redemption. In later years, he overcame many of those challenges and continued to perform, sharing not just music but wisdom gained through experience. Even as time passed, Moore remained connected to his audience, proving that true soul never fades, it evolves. His later appearances showed a man who had endured hardship but refused to be defined by it. Sam Moore passed away in 2025 at the age of 89, leaving behind a legacy that continues to influence generations of artists. His life stands as a testament to resilience, reminding us that even in the face of struggle, it is possible to rise again and keep the music alive. His voice, filled with both joy and pain, remains a lasting echo of an era where music came straight from the heart. As we look back at these legendary voices from raw soul to timeless classics, one question still lingers. Were these habits simply part of the era, or did they quietly take more than they gave? Behind the fame, the applause, and the unforgettable music, there were real lives shaped by choices, pressure, and survival. So what do you think? Could these icons have lived longer, or was this the price of greatness in their time? Share your thoughts below. And if these stories moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the conversation. This is Golden Black Legends, where every story deserves to be remembered.